Okay. I left my stylus in my office, so Fiona's run to get it. So we'll do electronics in a minute. Ready? I'm ready to talk. I'm just not ready to draw. So I got a lot of emails saying this externality thing really made me extremely nervous. All right, as it should. It's my favorite model. It'll most likely be on the final since it's one of my favorite models. I've already sold Monopolistic Competition as my favorite model. I shouldn't sell everything. You have multiple kids. Everyone's your favorite. Sorry? I don't want to talk about it. Thanks for rubbing it in. That was great. The trouble is, I know your name. Yeah, you want to be careful with that one. You can pick on anything, just not on my soccer team. I'm joking. I don't take these things totally personally. All right. Let me quickly, while we wait for the stylus, quickly go through externalities, what I showed you last time, because we're going to pick that up again and then go crazy with the welfare analysis and show what a tax does. But when you think about a market where there's some output produced, oh, you're so good. Thank you so much. Fiona, greatest GSI ever. And 12 years, that's 24 classes, times 3, that's a lot of GSIs. So you are in the 1.5%. All right, I can draw now. I'm so sorry. Imagine what it's like to live with me, with this level of distraction. Here we go. This should do it. All right. Here we go. No blackboard. We're going to do this electronically. So what's the story today? We're going to finish externalities. We're going to start on public goods, and it'll be an exciting lecture. So last time, asymmetric information, we looked at the market for lemons, and we showed this neat setup for if the reservation price for people for the high-quality good is high enough, you may actually end up with an equilibrium where none of the high-quality cars get sold and only crappy cars end up on the market, which of course is not a desirable equilibrium. It's not efficient from a welfare point of view either. So that's what we finished off last time. Then we dove into externalities, where the key new insight here was that there are settings where the private marginal cost to firms of production is actually lower than the social marginal cost because their activities result in either negative or positive externalities onto society. So what firms do is they, as part of their production, they produce some nasty stuff. Could be noise, could be air pollution, could be water pollution, could be anything that's bad for others, and that imposes a cost on society. Now, one good question I got in office hours. One of you came into my office hours and asked 4 really excellent questions. Usually the maximum number of excellent questions I get is 2. So 4 in a row. That was amazing. Good office hours this week. Asked, Max, I get the notion of an externality, but you kept on talking about kids that go home with asthma from air pollution or people that die from air pollution. That's not measured in dollars, right? That's measured in days of school missed or days of or life years lost or something like that. How do you turn that into dollars? Well, let me tell you about something called the value of a statistical life. You may already get a rash from that word alone. All right, statistical life. Ugh. So what we do in economics is the following. Do you know this show? I always call it extreme fishing, but it's not called that. It's those fishermen that are up in Alaska. What's it called? Deadliest Catch, right? So they're these boats, and you go up there, and they open a fishery for a couple of days a year. It's the halibut fishery, I believe. And it's crazy cold, crazy waves, extreme conditions. It's one of the most dangerous jobs you can have. Why do people do it? Money, right? Wages are really high. So why are wages so high? Because it's really dangerous. You may die, right? People die all the time. So what we do is we look at wage differentials across jobs that have different probabilities of death. And what we're arguing is that your willingness to accept a higher wage for a higher risk of dying reflects your valuation of death. So what we're doing is we're looking at small changes in the probability of death across jobs, and we're looking at the corresponding differences in wages, controlling for all kinds of other confounders, and then taking that number, ramping the probability of death up to 1, and figuring out what that dollar value would be. So how much money, through your revealed actions, would you accept if we were to ramp up the probability of death to 1? Sounds pretty intriguing, right? So there are studies that did this. One of my friends actually did this for the deadliest catch fisheries. He flew up there to these islands in Alaska. He said he's never writing a paper like this again because it was the scariest flight ever. You sort of go island hopping, and then they see this big cloud with like the end of the world coming down. So they land on these little strips, wait till the cloud passes, take off again, and sort of make their way out to these boats. It's really scary. People have done this for less crazy things like different agricultural jobs that have different probabilities of death. Agriculture is a dangerous occupation. We've looked at speed limits, all kinds of cool things to back up this value. So what do you think the value of a statistical life is, roughly? Certain death. Anybody want to take a guess? 600? 160,000. Any other takers? Come on, yes. Make up a number between 0 and infinity. 500,000? They do. That's the right answer. It's like, Max, look it up and tell us, all right? Yeah. So the answer actually is insurance companies do have that information, but the people who actually use this information are regulators, right? When we try and figure out what the benefits and costs from certain regulations are, we need to know what the cost of death is. So the number that the government uses ranges, depending on what department you're talking about, somewhere between $4 and $8 million per life lost, all right? Big number. So if you have a regulation that costs you 100, 200 lives, all of a sudden you're talking about big, big bucks, right? There's a big debate in economics about whether somebody who dies at age 70 should also be worth $8 million compared to somebody who dies at age 4, right? Or whether people in the United States should have the same value of a statistical life as people in India, right? So there's some really interesting ethical debates here that I'm not even going to try and get into because you'll start hurling stuff at me, and I have a long day ahead of me today, all right? But the notion here is we can assign dollar values to death. We can assign dollar values to missed days of school, where, for example, we're looking at what are the long-run wage outcomes for people who attend school less frequently versus more frequently, and we back out what this means in dollar terms. It's really, really hard to do, but there's some really cool research going on at Berkeley in this exact direction, not looking at air pollution, but looking at extreme heat days. You know, how bad is it for you in terms of long-run wage outcomes if you were in utero exposed to a larger number of really hot days? Turns out the preliminary non-peer-reviewed number is pretty big 30 years out, all right? So there's some amazing stuff going. I could talk about this for hours. There's people who've looked at shutdowns of refineries in Mexico City and looked at discrete drops in local air pollution and looked at what this means for immediate birth weight outcomes after birth for babies that were exposed to the pollution from the refinery versus babies that were in utero just after the shutdown of the refinery, and looking at difference, and there are significant differences there too. So while you think economics is extremely boring, those of you standing in the back have a seat. We've got lots of seats. You don't have to sit on the stairs. Come on in. We're friendly. We don't bite. You know this by now. Actually, I haven't bitten yet. You don't know I don't bite, but so far, no danger. So in economics, this whole area of research is extremely active. trying to put dollar values on these externalities. So what we do know from our little theory model is that firms produce too much output and pollution if we leave the market alone, right? So if we just let firms make their own decisions, they will produce an output level and corresponding level of pollution that's inefficiently high. When we look at this at the society level, we will actually see that we produce too much pollution and charge a price that's too low. We showed last time that the efficient price and efficient level of pollution, so the efficient price is higher, efficient level of pollution is lower. So there's deadweight loss, all right? So let me just quickly do this deadweight loss thing one more time with a slightly different marginal external cost curve so we learn something new, all right? So the way you want to think about this now is I'm going to think about a marginal external cost curve that's not constant. Not each level of pollution causes the same additional dollar damage, but as you add incrementally more pollution, the dollar damage goes much, much higher. So the way where you see this very often is in air pollution, for example, where at low levels of air quality, if you increase air pollution by 1 unit, it's only really sensitive parts of the population that feel negative consequences, asthmatics, the elderly, newborn babies. But as the air quality gets worse, there's a certain built-in tolerance where the share of the population that's affected and sensitive to this air quality is just much, much larger, and all of a sudden the external cost, because of the size of the sensitive population to these higher concentrations is bigger, the marginal external cost gets bigger as concentrations are worse, all right? That means that the marginal external cost is not a flat horizontal line, constant, across output, but it's actually increasing. So let's try and draw that and see what welfare looks like in that scenario. So price, quantity. So I'm not sure how this Surface thing is going to do today. It refused to connect to the internet today, so now I've got a USB drive with my slides in here on the side. I'm stepping back in time. So if this thing crashes, who knows? Fun times. Okay. So here's my supply curve. Here's my demand curve. And the market left alone, of course, will produce Q star units and P star units. Oops. Another piece of confusion that somebody had coming into the office, max Q star so far always meant optimal. Q star to me means what the market does left alone, right? So far we've dealt with perfectly competitive markets, no market failure, so that happens to be optimal. Here, the market left alone will produce Q star units, charge a price of P star, but as we'll show in a second, that won't be optimal. It's just a choice of notation. So the optimal thing, I will always point out what's the socially optimal part. So last time, don't write that down, the marginal external cost curve looked like this. Right? It was flat, so each additional unit of output, each additional unit of pollution had the same additional incremental damage on society. I don't want to do that because that's easy and boring. Easy is always boring. Here we go. So let's do a crazy complex marginal external cost curve. Let's do it in red because that's just threatening here. Danger. This is the marginal external cost curve where with each additional unit now, the incremental damage gets higher. Why is that? It's all got to do with the physical relationship between pollution and the damage it inflicts on society, right? So this is something that epidemiologists with the help of economists try and calculate. And I do a lot of this. There's a guy, Michael Greenstone, who does a lot of this. Lots and lots of attention paid to this. Also, the nice thing that we get now is we can actually estimate these things much more precisely because we've got access to all kinds of individual level data that we weren't able to get access to before. So supply curve, that's just the aggregation of the individual firm's private marginal cost curves, right? We know that from producer theory. The marginal external cost curve, that's the external cost curve across these firms. So social marginal cost is the sum of marginal external cost plus private marginal cost. So at any level of quantity now, you simply add to the private marginal cost, whatever at that level is the marginal external cost here. So let's pick a couple of good ones, all right? So at this level, 1, 2, 3 here, marginal external cost looks like it's exactly 1 square tall, right? So social marginal cost is private marginal cost plus 1 square. So we add 1 square. For those of you who don't print out notes, don't have iPads, and don't see very well, when I talk about squares, what I mean here is this nice grid paper that I have going on in the back of my graph here. Now, if I go to a higher level of output, for example, right here, so this is 4, 5, 6, how about 6.5? At 6.5, the marginal external cost is exactly 2 squares. So at 6.5, I add 2 squares, 1, 2, to my private marginal cost. And since this is a straight line, I'm going to have to use my thick line here. This is going to be the social marginal cost. So social marginal cost is just the vertical sum of private marginal cost and marginal external cost. What this means, of course, is that the socially optimal output level is where the full marginal cost of production, social marginal cost of production, is equal to the marginal benefit or the demand curve here. So that is going to be, let's draw it in green because that's the good outcome. Okay, so this is P double star Q double star. So again, same notion. There's a positive marginal external cost, which means there's damages here. Social marginal cost is higher than private marginal cost, and the socially optimal output level, Q double star here in green, is lower than what the firms would do if left alone, and the socially optimal price is higher than what firms would do were they left alone. So now if we do our quick little consumer surplus, producer surplus, external cost, and welfare calculations here, which we love oh so much, will those be on the final, Max? What do you think? Yes! You know the semester is getting bad when you're getting sick of your own jokes. So what we always start with is we're going to start with what we think the social optimum is, and then we could compare it to whatever the non-social optimum is. You could do it either way. It doesn't really matter. You'll get the same answer. So how about we start with Q double star, and then go with Q star, and then we have the change right here. Okay, let's think about some pizza slices here. I need 1 more pizza slice. How do you know this, Professor Alfhammer? I'm so good at this stuff. You can, again, that was a joke. You can, again, of course, cut this up into as many pizza slices as you want, but I know I'm going to need that one. All right, so pizza slice A, B, C. Let me just be careful here. D, E, F, G, H. These look all the ones I need. And then just for fun, I and J. Okay, how do we do welfare? Well, let's do the socially optimal output level first here. Okay, socially optimal output level is Q double star. The price that goes along with it is P double star. So consumer surplus is A. Producer surplus is going to be the area between price, private marginal cost over the range of production. So it's going to be B, C, D, and E. And in a regular world, we would be done. The only problem is here, we're pumping all kinds of nasty pollution into the environment, so we're causing I dollars worth of external costs here. So you could write minus I into the external costs, right? And then add this all up and be done with it, and that would be right? But it's not quite as clean as doing the following. We realize that total external cost is just summing up across the range of production the marginal external cost. So I is the total external cost of producing Q double star. Now I can take these 2 points right here, and I can drag them up here, right? And they would have the exact same distance right here between this point and that point as I have between this point and that point. That means the area from the origin going up the blue line to the production, up, and below the red line right here, area D and E has the exact same area as area I. So external costs are minus D minus E, which is equal to I. So total welfare is going to be A plus B plus C at the optimum. What about Q double star? All right, let's do it. All right, Q star. The firm's left alone here, so the blue one. So at Q star, consumer surplus area above P star, below price right here, over the range of consumption, it's going to be A, B, E, and F. Producer surplus is going to be the area below price, above supply, over the range of production. It's going to be C, D, and G. External costs are going to be this big triangle here now, I plus J, but the same area as I plus J. Again, just drag this up here, and this triangle right here is going to have the same area as this triangle right here. So external costs are minus D, minus E, minus F, minus G, minus H. Minus D, minus E, minus F, minus G, minus H. So if you sum these all up, D cancels out, E cancels out, F cancels out, G cancels out. So we've got A, B, C, minus H. Whoa, how exciting is that? Dead weight loss of H. Okay, so this is my dead weight loss here. So same thing, that's supposed to be an H, it's just going off the screen. So same thing as before. Before, the shift in the marginal external cost was simply induced a parallel shift of the supply curve, where you're just adding a constant to the supply curve. Here, you're just sort of rotating it up because the marginal external cost is upward sloping. So I personally, while lots of people don't like to think about this in terms of a rotation or a shift, I always think of it in the same way. I simply vertically add marginal external cost to private marginal cost and look at what the resulting social marginal cost is. Vertical summation. Okay, so that's welfare. What this means, and I don't use red font lightly. Have I used red font ever in this course before? No, right? Because I want this to have a high impact here. So welfare is maximized where price is equal to social marginal cost, which gets you to the level of output where we've come to the optimal trade-off between the benefit from consuming power, paper, whatever it is we're consuming here, and the harm of pollution. That value often means that in equilibrium, we have positive amounts of pollution, except for when you're talking about really highly toxic substances which have very low benefits. Often the optimal level of pollution is 0, right? But the takeaway message here is if you have externalities, and we'll see that again in public goods in a little bit, the private market will not reach the socially optimal output level, right? So leaving the market alone is wrong here, which is going to require the government to step in and help us reach the optimal outcome. So Max, how do we do this? We do this in a variety of ways. If you really want to learn how to do this, take a good environmental economics class. So there's an organization called the National Research Council, which rates graduate programs and departments across the country in different disciplines, and we like to come out very near the top of this ranking. So they give you a rank, and then they give you a standard deviation around your rank. We were one of 3 departments in the entire world where the rank was 1 with a standard error of 0, right? There's absolutely 0 doubt that ARE is the top department in its discipline. To you, ARE is EAP, Environmental Economics and Policy, which offers lots and lots of classes in environmental regulation. Can you see I'm pitching a little bit here? But if you're interested in environmental regulation, EAP has really fantastic classes that teach you this stuff in detail. So I'm going to give you about 6 semesters worth of environmental economics in 2 slides. It can be done. Is it good? No. But better some than none. So there's 2 ways of thinking about regulations. There's so-called price incentives, where you set incentives for consumers and firms, and you let them choose what they want to do according to what the price is, right? So I can tell my son Noah, for each carrot you eat, you get a penny. Right? He likes pennies better than dimes because they have a cooler color. So this works great for me. But the point here is I'm not going to stand there and go, you better eat your carrots, or else. But I'm just saying each carrot you eat, a penny. I know paying your kids to do things they should be doing is maybe wrong to many of you, but I'm an economist. There's so many things I do that are wrong to you, I'm not worried. But the point here is we can set price incentives where we impose taxes for bad behavior. So if you emit something, we charge a tax for each unit emitted. Those are sometimes called fees. A fee and a tax, exactly the same thing. It's just tax is not politically acceptable versus a fee sometimes is, right? So often, if we ever get a carbon tax, I'm sure it'll be called like a carbon fee with unicorns around it.